It begins in silence. The kind of silence that feels wrong. The kind that presses against the ears and makes the air feel heavy. Because on that quiet March morning in 1993, a father unlocked the door to his daughter's small Indianapolis apartment, expecting to see signs of life. Maybe a jack on a chair or a light left on. But instead, he stepped into a stillness that would fracture his world forever. And when his eyes finally adjusted, what he saw inside that apartment would burn into his memory for the rest of his life. Because Carmen Van Huss, only 19 years old, kind, responsible, and full of plans that would now never be lived, was gone in every way that mattered. And before we go any further, before this story pulls you deeper into decades of unanswered questions, help keep Carmen's name alive by liking this video, subscribing for more real cold cases where time and truth collide, and commenting your thoughts as we go, because stories like this only stay visible when people refuse to look away. And now the story continues, because Carmen Van Huss was the kind of young woman families hope their children grow up to be: dependable, gentle, close to her family, not reckless, not running with dangerous crowds. And on the night she disappeared, she had done nothing unusual at all. She had visited her grandmother in a hospital in Indianapolis. A normal act of love, a short visit that was supposed to be followed by a simple trip home to her apartment, a place that should have been safe, familiar, and ordinary. But that night something went terribly wrong, because neighbors would later report hearing strange noises, a disturbance that sounded like an argument or a struggle, a sound that would later become one of the most haunting unanswered clues in the entire investigation, because at the time it was dismissed, written off as nothing serious. Just another noise complaint in a city full of apartment walls and passing lives, and that single moment of dismissal would echo for more than 30 years. Because Carmen never showed up where she was supposed to be. She didn't call, she didn't explain, and that silence became the first warning sign that something irreversible had happened when her father arrived and discovered the scene inside the apartment. The evidence told a story without words, a story of violence, fear, and a life interrupted mid-sentence. And from that moment forward, Carmen Van Huss was no longer just a daughter or a sister. She became a case number, a crime scene, and eventually one of Indiana's most painful unsolved murders. Detectives worked the case in the early days with urgency, canvassing neighbors, retracing her final movements, reviewing that noise complaint again and again, but leads dried up quickly. Forensic science in 1993 was limited. DNA technology was still in its infancy, and whatever evidence existed was either incomplete, contaminated, or simply not advanced enough to speak. And as weeks turned into months and months into years, the investigation slowed, resources were redirected, new crimes demanded attention, and Carmen's case quietly slipped into the cold case archives, where so many victims are left waiting. Her family never stopped grieving, never stopped asking questions, never stopped hoping that one day someone would care enough to reopen the file. Because for them, time did not heal anything. It only stretched the pain thinner across decades. Her father carried the image of that apartment with him every day. Her brother carried a promise in his heart that he would never stop pushing for answers. And the city moved on, unaware that a killer was still out there, hidden in plain sight, protected by time, luck, and silence. Years passed, then decades, and Carmen's name became one of many whispered in true crime circles as a case that might never be solved. Until something extraordinary happened. Not a task force, not a flood of funding, not a breakthrough ordered from above, but a single detective working off duty, driven not by assignment but by obsession, a detective who stumbled across Carmen's file and felt something that wouldn't let him walk away, something that told him this case deserved more than dust and forgotten paperwork. And without authorization, without budget, and often without support, he began re-examining the evidence piece by piece, revisiting old reports, rereading witness statements, replaying that noise complaint over and over in his mind, asking the questions that should have been asked years earlier. And then he hit the same wall so many before him had hit: DNA testing. Because while forensic science had advanced dramatically since 1993, testing cold case evidence was expensive, slow, and often deprioritized. And Carmen's case, on paper, didn't qualify for immediate resources. So the detective did something almost unheard of, something that blurred the line between duty and devotion. He crowd-funded the DNA testing himself, reaching into his own pocket, refusing to let Money be the reason a 19-year-old stayed silent forever, and when that DNA was finally tested using modern techniques, something remarkable happened. The evidence spoke. A single biological trace, preserved through time, finally had a voice, and that voice pointed toward a truth that had been hiding in plain sight for decades. Genetic genealogy, a tool that didn't exist when Carmen was killed, allowed investigators to build family trees, trace distant relatives, and narrow down a suspect. Not through tips or confessions, but through the cold, impartial language of science. And when the name finally surfaced, it sent shockwaves through the community, because the person linked to Carmen's murder was not a shadowy stranger from a dark alley, but someone who had lived among them, unnoticed, unchallenged, free, for more than 30 years. The arrest stunned those who thought the case was forgotten forever, and for Carmen's family, the moment was overwhelming. Relief tangled with grief. Justice arriving far too late to save a life, but just in time to restore her name. In court, the evidence told the story Carmen never could. The DNA matched, the timeline, the forensic reconstruction of what happened inside that apartment. And when the verdict finally came, it wasn't just a legal conclusion. It was a reckoning with time itself, a reminder that while justice can be delayed, it does not have to disappear. Carmen Van Huss was no longer a cold case, no longer a question mark in a filing cabinet. She was a victim whose voice had been returned through persistence, love, and science. Her father did not get his daughter back. Her brother did not get the future they imagined, but they got something many families never do, an answer. And as this story closes, it leaves behind questions that reach far beyond one apartment in Indianapolis. How many other cases are waiting for the right technology, the right person, the right moment? How many killers are still hidden in plain sight, protected by time? And what responsibility do we have to keep these stories alive? Because if you had heard that noise to the wall that night, that cry for help, would you have acted differently? Do you believe every cold case can eventually be solved, or are there some truths time will always try to bury? Carmen's story proves that silence does not always win, that a single drop of DNA can outlast decades of denial, and that sometimes justice does not come from systems, but from individuals who refuse to let the dead be forgotten. And as long as stories like this are told, names like Carmen Van Huss will never truly disappear. Behind every cold case is a family still waiting. If this story moved you, support their voices by liking this video. Join the conversation in the comments. Your thoughts matter here. And subscribe to Untold Crime for more real stories where justice doesn't stop searching.